Welcome to Morbidology. I'm your host, Emily G. Thompson, author of Unsolved Child Murders, Cults Uncovered, Mysteries Uncovered, and co-author of Unsolved Murders, True Crime Cases Uncovered. Join Morbidology on Patreon for exclusive episodes of Morbidology Plus, exclusive merch, ad-free and early release episodes, and much more. SoHo House Hotel is a members-only hotel located in the heart of New York City. It's long been a playpen for the rich and famous. And while it's not the sort of hotel one would imagine grisly acts occurring, in December of 2010, a guest would complain of water leaking from the ceiling. Hotel management went to investigate, and what they found in the hotel room directly above would shatter the idyl of the celebrity hotspot. It was around 2 a.m. on the 10th of December 2010, when a guest at SoHo House Hotel on 9th Avenue, New York City, noticed that water was leaking from the ceiling. The concerned guest called hotel management, who needed to investigate the source of the leak. It was evident that it was coming from the hotel room directly above. The SoHo House Hotel is a private members-only hotel, which consists of just 24 rooms and a private club. It boasts of a screening room, a library, and even a heated rooftop swimming pool. To enter the hotel, members need to be verified at the front desk. It's located on Manhattan's west side and is a hotspot for New York City's elite. It's a very unassuming hotel from the outside. With no sign, it simply looks like another tan brick building, but inside is a sight to see. It has hosted numerous celebrities, including Nicole Kidman, David Beckham, and Naomi Watts. An episode of Sex and the City was filmed at the rooftop swimming pool. Annual membership for SoHo House Hotels costs $2,100, but this is to only join a single club. If somebody wants to access all of the SoHo houses in the United States, it costs $3,200 a year. They like to appeal to the younger generation, and those 27 years old and younger get 50% off their membership. Back at the hotel management entered the hotel room directly above the one that had the leak coming from the ceiling. They had knocked on the door but received no reply, so used a master key to gain entry. Inside the bathroom, they found a woman dressed in a thin black sweater and underwear, submerged face up in the oval tub. The water was overflowing onto the bathroom floor and leaking into the hotel room below.
I work for a hotel. We need somebody here immediately. She's found her in the tub. One of the night managers is trying to resuscitate her and she's not breathing.
Prescription medication was found inside the hotel room, but the pills were still inside the bottle. There also appeared to be some kind of small red mark on the woman's neck, but there was no evidence of a struggle inside the hotel room. The manager of the hotel grabbed the woman from the bathtub and attempted to perform CPR, but to no avail. Paramedics and police were called to the scene, where the woman was pronounced dead. The woman was identified as 33-year-old Sylvie Cachay, a well-known swimsuit designer. Sylvie had been born in Peru to Sylvie, who was a designer, and Antonio, who worked as an ear, nose and throat doctor. She had dual citizenship and she liked to split her time in between Peru and Virginia. She had graduated from Marymount College with a degree in design. As a young girl, Sylvie had collected swimsuits, and she admired her mother's work as a designer. After leaving college, Sylvie interned at Marc Jacobs and had worked for Tommy Hilfiger and Victoria's Secret, where she ran the swimsuit design team. In 2006, Sylvie left her job at Victoria's Secret and decided to embark on her own venture. She had always dreamed of designing her own collection of swimsuits, and she did. Her collection was called Sila, named in honour of a friend and her mother, and they featured high-end fabrics that were always in a bright and bold colour. The swimsuits would sell for between $200 and $400. At the debut, Sylvie had said, "I'm so proud to be making this dream come to fruition." As her former publicist, Kate Grisly, said, When she launched Sila, she was the new starlet of swim. Sylvie's swimsuit collection was featured in Elle and Vogue, and Anna Wintour was a massive fan, ordering in her swimsuits and her collection of towels. Sylvie was also a massive animal lover. She had 2 poodles and had recently just taken in a sick pigeon that she found on the street. Sylvie had a close circle of friends and she liked to take care of herself and her body by eating healthy and doing yoga. She was known as the mother among her group of friends, often taking care of everybody while on nights out. Sylvie had trouble in the past with previous boyfriends and could never quite find one who was good for her. As her friend said to the Post, she was always telling me she had terrible luck with men. She kept asking me to set her up with a nice guy. She'd been seeing several men and they all turned out to be real jerks. After the economy collapsed, Sylvie lost her backing and the swimsuit collection folded. In the meantime, she was designing at Anne Cole, who's most known for the invention of the tankini. Just hours before Sylvie's body was found, she had checked into the hotel with her 26-year-old boyfriend, Nicholas Brooks. Sylvie was a member of the exclusive hotel. Brooks was the son of the Academy Award winner Joseph Brooks, who'd won the award for composing You Light Up My Life, which was a track from the 1977 film of the same name. He also directed the film. Around a year before Sylvie was found dead, Joseph Brooks was accused of sexually assaulting 11 women that he had lured to his apartment under the pretense of giving them a role in an upcoming movie. He was charged with 82 counts of rape, sexual assault, criminal sexual act, and assault, and he pleaded not guilty to the charges against him and was currently out on bail. Ironically, You Light Up My Life was about a comedian who had a one-night stand with a director. The younger Brooks, Sylvie's boyfriend, had been seen leaving the hotel earlier and he wasn't in the hotel room when Sylvie's body was found. However, shortly after her body was discovered, he appeared and was met by paramedics and law enforcement. He was taken down to police headquarters to be questioned, but it was noted that he was not charged with any crime. It hadn't yet been determined how Sylvie had died and whether foul play was involved. Sylvie and Brooks had been dating for around 6 months. The couple were introduced to one another while at a party being held by a mutual friend. They ended up talking for hours, and Sylvie agreed to go on a date with Brooks. Their meeting had come just after Sylvie's poodle was hit by a car and killed. Sylvie had been distraught over the loss of her beloved dog. As Sylvie's mother, Sylvia, said, he helped her through all this process and they became boyfriend and girlfriend. Brooks had grown up in England, where his mother lived, but he spent summers in the Hamptons with his father. Brooks' mother was Susan Paul, a Playboy model who had won custody of Brooks and his sister back in the early 1990s. Brooks had lived quite the life of luxury, and essentially he was born with a golden spoon in his mouth. His father's wealth had enabled luxury vacations from Hawaii to Deer Valley in Utah. All families have their own problems, though, and Brooks Sr.'s problems were evident. After the divorce, Brooks Sr. won custody of Brooks and his sister after he refused to send them back to England from his home in the United States. He claimed that Susan was abusive to the children, something that both of them had denied. When Brooks' sister eventually flew back to England, Brooks Sr. sent her a letter telling her to never return and that she was dead to him. He was clearly using his own children, and Brooks wouldn't see his mother or sister for over a decade. In 2005, Brooks took out a full-page advert in the New York Times in honour of his father's birthday. It read, "He really has made a profound difference in the world. I wanted to tell it while he was still alive. He is the most talented, most daring, most tenacious man I know. He also gets me Knicks tickets. I am proud to be your son. Happy birthday, Dad, your loving son, Nick." The advert also claimed that Brooks Sr. had made a $2 million contribution to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Centre. However, around a month later, doubt would be cast on the claims by the journal Oncology Times, who wrote that his claims had discrepancies unexplained, questions unanswered. It was discovered that the ad was just a marketing ploy for Brooks Sr., who had helped his son write the ad to favour him in a good light When Brooks finally started speaking with his mother and sister again, Brooks Sr. flew into an absolute rage. He threw Brooks out of his home and cut off his access to his trust fund. Brooks had attended the University of Colorado for 2 years, where he was remembered for his desperate attempts to gain friends. He would indulge in alcohol and drugs and essentially throw money at people. Those in college with him said that he seemingly had an unlimited stash of cocaine and liquor and would pay people to go to clubs with him. He always took a taxi and refused to drive himself anywhere. Other students in the college knew him as a trust fund kid, and some speculated that despite his family's wealth, he would steal from other people, seemingly getting a kick out of it. In 2008, Brooks had got a summons from Boulder police for bringing alcohol to a party filled with underage kids. Instead of cooperating with the police, Brooks got up in their faces, screaming that he was going to get a lawyer. He would spend 4 semesters on the Boulder campus before dropping out. Those who knew Sylvie and Brooks said that the relationship was marred by arguments, and these arguments were not exclusive to behind closed doors. According to a source at a bar in the West Village, Sylvie would always pay the bills since Brooks was unemployed, and they would always be fighting in public. Brooks was a field musician, and many felt as though he and Sylvie were a mismatch. Brooks lived with 3 friends in the East Village. Those who visited the apartment described it as a pigsty, and the stench of marijuana from the apartment was unmissable. It certainly wasn't a mystery why people believed that Sylvie and Brooks were an odd match. Typically, Sylvie went for men that were similar to her, ambitious and driven, but Brooks was the opposite. Sylvie, however, liked to take care of people. She had a massive heart and she took sympathy on Brooks because of his troubled upbringing. Then around 2 weeks before Sylvie was found dead, she had written an email to her former publicist, Kate, complaining about Brooks' erratic behaviour. As Kate said, the topic was her boyfriend, and it was not positive. He has a lot of issues, is all I can say. I don't think it was a healthy relationship. I think he's unstable from what she's told me. She had also written another email to another friend, which indicated trouble. It read, "I love Nick, but he wasn't good for me. He holds me back. I'm always sad with him. He's 24 for fuck's sake. He wants porn sex. He wants to be drunk or stoned all the time. He doesn't have any goals and he stops me from mine." Sylvie had lived in the West Village, but a fire had broken out at the apartment on the evening of the 8th of December. Brooks had given Sylvie's annex and then he went into the shower. When he came out, he found that the bed was on fire with Sylvie sleeping on it. It had been ignited by candles that were by the headboard. According to Sylvie's neighbour Judy, she had heard Sylvie crying and had heard Brooks stomping around. The smell from the smoke inside the apartment was what caused Sylvie to check into SoHo House. In fact, when she was checking in, she blamed Brooks for the accidental fire, joking with the receptionist. "He's a stoner. He's always stoned. Who puts candles behind the bed?" Brooks also commented on the fire to the receptionist, telling them that he had come out of the bathroom to find Sylvie's hair and the bed on fire. They had managed to put out the fire, but the smell of smoke was still lingering in the air, so they decided to come to SoHo House Hotel for the night. Sylvie also commented to the receptionist that she was struggling to stay awake because she had taken a bunch of Xanax. Sylvie actually needed to be helped up to the hotel room by the concierge. After helping her into the hotel room, the concierge heard Sylvie shouting at Brooks before going silent. Sylvie's body was transported to the medical examiner's office for a cause of death to be determined. As the autopsy was being conducted, tributes for Sylvie would come flooding in. Her mother Sylvia said, "It's beyond understanding. She was so beautiful. She was an artist. She was a fashion designer. She was an entrepreneur, a girl that spoke 4 languages." Her former publicist, Kate, would tell CNN News, "Sylvie Cachay was one of those rare individuals who truly sparkled when she spoke. She will be deeply and painfully missed, yet celebrated, honoured and never forgotten." Sylvie's parents, Sylvia and Antonio, would state that they immediately believed that foul play was involved. For one, they couldn't understand why Sylvie had been found in the bathtub. She never took baths, instead preferring to hop in the shower. Antonio said that they were desperate for answers, and hopefully they would come with the results of the autopsy. Meanwhile, Brooks would claim that he had been in and out of the room, drinking and snacking for a while in the lounge, while Sylvie lay in bed. He said that at one point she informed him that she planned on taking a bath and washing her hair. According to Brooks, he told Sylvie he was going out and he went to get drinks after running into a friend in the hotel lobby. He said that when he left, Sylvie was alive and well. He and the friend allegedly drank at the bar and then went to the man's apartment, where they drank some more and took some cocaine. CCTV footage from inside the hotel did show Brooks leaving the hotel room repeatedly in the hours that followed them checking in. They had checked in at around 12:30 a.m, and then Sylvie was found dead before 3 a.m. He was inside the hotel room from 1:45 a.m. to 2:16 a.m, after which he claimed he left to go to the bar for drinks. It was almost 20 minutes before Brooks left the hotel room for the final time that the front desk received the first complaint about water coming through the ceiling. While Brooks claimed that he and Sylvie were still an item, Sylvie's friends would say otherwise. Sylvie had confided in her friends that the day before she was found dead, she had broken up with Brooks. Sylvie had also told her mother while on a family vacation in Cancun, around 2 weeks earlier, that she had broken up with Brooks. According to Sylvia, her daughter had said, "Mummy, we're just friends now. He's trying, but I told him that I don't want to have a serious relationship or consider marriage if he doesn't change." According to a neighbour, Sylvie and Brooks had been at her West Village apartment just hours before Sylvie was found dead. She had overheard them fighting. She heard Brooks shout, "You really hurt me." She then heard a loud crash, like something had been thrown on the floor, followed by the sound of Sylvie whimpering. The neighbour stated, "It was very disturbing. It was a lot of anger." While it was initially speculated that Sylvie may have had an accidental overdose, investigators quickly began to believe that foul play had been involved. In addition to the red mark on Sylvie's neck, there was a bite mark on her hand, and hemorrhaging around her eyes as well as cuts to her lips that were consistent with compression of the mouth. Her autopsy had come back inconclusive, but they were still waiting for the results from the toxicology test as well as tissue testing, and that would take a few weeks. While the results were inconclusive, they did show that the injuries Sylvie had sustained were not self-inflicted or accidentally caused. Just the day after Sylvie's body was found, Brooks was arrested. As he was led to the police car, media congregated.
Nicholas, did you strangle your girlfriend? Did you kill Sylvie?
Brooks was charged with attempted murder and strangulation. He appeared in court to be formally charged and was ordered to be held without bail. Prosecutors revealed during the court hearing that during a search of the hotel room, they had found a letter from Brooks to Sylvie in her purse. It showed that Brooks hadn't accepted that she was ending their relationship. Prosecutor Jordan Arnold said, "Friends of the victim said the relationship was coming to an end, and the defendant did not accept the reality." He went on to reveal that Brooks had been investigated once before for abusing an ex-girlfriend. In this prior relationship, when the couple fought, Brooks would become uncontrollably angry. He would knock things over, break her cell phone, and even punch out the windows. During one argument, he had shouted at his ex-girlfriend, "You belong in the ground like your father." Brooks's defense lawyer, Jeffrey Hoffman, said that there was no doubt in his mind that his client was innocent of any wrongdoing, adding that when he left the hotel room that night, Sylvie was absolutely fine and asleep in bed. He said that after Brooks left the hotel room, he returned on his own volition. He said, "Not exactly the act of someone who had just murdered someone." Investigators were working on the theory that Brooks had strangled Sylvie and then placed her into the bathtub with the water running. They had decided to charge him with attempted murder as opposed to murder because they could prove that Brooks had strangled Sylvie, but they could not prove that it was the strangulation that caused her to die. The charges had deployed a new state law which made it a crime to strangle somebody, despite the fact if they are seriously harmed or not. The purpose of the new state law was to tackle domestic violence, and had only taken effect the month beforehand. The charges, however, could be elevated as the investigation continued. When Brooks was arrested, he told investigators that he had a trust fund he could tap for bail money, and he expressed concern that he was going to be beaten up in jail. He stated, "I'm Jewish and I'm worried about getting beat up by white supremacists. I watched the show Oz. I've seen what happens in jail." He then asked, "How long can I get for something like this? Should I pay someone for protection while I'm in?" With Brooks behind bars, Sylvie's loved ones would attend a memorial at the Core Club. Her family announced that in her honour they were setting up a charitable foundation to aid women in abusive relationships and develop young artistic talent. Each attendee was given a button with Sylvie's face emblazoned on the front, and they gathered to reminisce about happier times. Her father, Antonio, revealed that her remains had arrived at the funeral home in Vienna, Virginia, which was near the family's home. He said to those in attendance, "It's tremendously helpful for us to have her near us, at home now." On the 15th of December, Brooks was indicted by a grand jury on murder charges. He didn't appear in court, where prosecutors announced the indictment. Sylvie's family were in attendance, though, including her two brothers, David and Patrick Orlando, who were wearing buttons with Sylvie's face on the front, alongside the words, "Sylvie loves you." Outside of court, David said that their sister meant everything to them. Shortly after the indictment was handed down, the medical examiner's office would release more details regarding Sylvie's cause of death. Sylvie had been held underwater and strangled. Her death was ruled a homicide. In early January, Brooks was formally charged with second-degree murder. During the court hearing, Prosecutor Arnold said, "The evidence in this case makes clear that when Nicholas Brooks left Soho House for the last time, on December 9th, Sylvie Cachay was already dead at the bottom of an overflowing bathtub." CCTV footage had shown Brooks leaving the hotel room 20 minutes after the first complaint about water came into the hotel front desk. This meant that before he left the hotel that night, the bathtub was already overflowing. Brooks would plead not guilty. Court documents would reveal some more information about the tumultuous relationship between Sylvie and Brooks. Brooks had admitted to investigators that they had been arguing that night. Sylvie had discovered that Brooks had been hiring sex workers behind her back and had even been paying for them with her own money. The letter that was found in Sylvie's purse had been an apology letter from Brooks, and it indicated that he wouldn't accept that their relationship was ending. It had also been uncovered that less than 24 hours before Sylvie was found dead in the tub, she had sent Brooks an email. The subject line read, "Fuck you." In the email, Sylvie accused Brooks of repeatedly stealing from her credit card, and she threatened to go to police. It read, "For the past 6 months I have supported you, financially and emotionally. The fact you cheated on me makes me sick, and you will fucking pay. I am speaking with the credit card company and the police, and I'm going to tell them that I never allowed you to use my card. I don't care. Have fun in jail." The email was absolutely damning, and it hinted towards a motivation. While Sylvie had found out about the sex workers, she hadn't discovered that Brooks was also sexting with a former girlfriend and asking her to buy him a plane ticket to California. 4 days before Sylvie died, he had texted this former girlfriend, "I'll be your man whore." As Brooks's case was meandering through the justice system, so was his father's. Towards the end of January, prosecutors announced that while Brooks Sr. was accused of sexually assaulting 13 women, he had attacked at least a dozen more. However, the district attorney's office was barred by statute of limitation rules from filing additional charges. District Attorney Maxine Rosenthal said that she had interviewed as many as 50 women, and it was hoped that these women would testify against Brooks Sr. in his upcoming trial. The names of the women had been found among 17,000 emails from Brooks Sr.'s computers, which were seized back when he was arrested in 2009. Much like his son, Brooks Sr. liked to hire sex workers. In addition to being a sexual predator, he had hired hundreds of escorts from 2005 until 2008, paying between $1,000 to $1,600 an hour for their company. According to Kristen Davis, who's known as the Manhattan Madam. Brooks Sr. sometimes liked to pay women to read him a bizarre and cheesy script that he had written about himself being handsome. She said that she had actually blacklisted Brooks Sr. for trying to stifle sex workers out of money and even hiding their purses. She chillingly stated that if they looked older than he had anticipated, then he would send them away, and he always requested the youngest-looking women. On one occasion, a sex worker had come over to his apartment. He ordered her to strip naked, and then he said to her, "You're fat. You're not what I'm looking for. Leave." Meanwhile, Brooks's defense lawyer announced that he was considering contesting the findings at Sylvie's autopsy. He said that he was going to review the autopsy report and then make the decision. In May, headlines around the world revealed that Brooks Sr. had taken his own life while awaiting trial on the rape charges. He was discovered in his Manhattan home. He had tied a plastic bag around his head and attached a helium tank to the plastic bag via a hose. He then wrapped a towel around his neck. He was discovered by a friend who had been scheduled to arrive at his home for a lunch date. His method of suicide was described in the book Final Exit as one of the easiest and most painless ways to die. Presumably, Brooks Sr. had researched the obscure method. He left behind a 3-page suicide note which made reference to his health issues. In 2008, he had suffered a stroke. The suicide led to the prevention of justice for all of Brooks Sr.'s victims. However, his aide, Shawnee Lucier, had been charged in connection with the sexual assaults as well. There were accusations that she had arranged the girls to come to his home, where he drugged and sexually assaulted them. Lucier had told investigators that she knew that Brooks Sr. piled the girls with alcohol, and that he had sex with them, but she denied any knowledge that they had been sexually assaulted and raped. She would ultimately be ordered to spend 4 months in prison. The decision came as a deal which let the prosecutor dispose of the case, preventing any further trauma for the victims. The suicide led to questions regarding Brooks' inheritance. With his father deceased, it was speculated that he was set to cash in. However, if he were convicted of Sylvie's murder, then New York's son of Sam law would prevent him from getting any of it. It would then be discovered that Brooks Sr. hadn't actually left any money to his children, but instead, he left it all to his young personal trainer. Brooks was hit with even more bad news when a wrongful death lawsuit was filed against him by Sylvie's family. He failed to respond to the wrongful death lawsuit, which resulted in their lawyer telling him that he technically admitted to the murder in doing so and should pay. Attorney Susan Carton stated, "We believe the reason he did not come in to defend this case is because there's no defense. Otherwise, why didn't he get a lawyer and defend it?" The following year, Brooks was found liable under civil law for the death of Sylvie. Since he had failed to respond, a court order granted a default judgment. Finally, in June of 2013, the murder trial was ready to proceed. It had been a long and torturous 2 years for Sylvie's loved ones, and they were ready for justice to be served. During opening statements, Prosecutor Arnold said that they believed that Brooks had murdered Sylvie after she tried several times to end the relationship. He revealed that Brooks's DNA was found on the tap of the bathtub. He stated, "Sylvie's dream and her life ended on December 9, 2010, when that man there turned a posh hotel room into a gruesome crime scene. It was an act as ruthless as it was cowardly." He then disclosed to the jury that in the note Brooks had written to Sylvie, he promised he would change and act better, in the hopes that she would not leave him. It read, "As I write this letter, my heart feels as if it's been taken out of my chest and placed on the page. I want you to know that my love for you only grows more and more each day, and if you will allow me to prove my love and devotion to you, I can swear that I will make you the happiest wife, mother, and sister in the world." Prosecutor Arnold said that instead of making good on those promises, Brooks instead strangled and drowned Sylvie in the bathtub. In a last-bid attempt to save the relationship, Sylvie had written a 5-page ultimatum, which contained a litany of simple demands, such as wake up by 10 a.m. and get out of bed, clean up after yourself, get a job and be productive. They were very simple demands that one would expect a grown man to do without being asked. Sylvie did stay with Brooks for a while after she wrote the letter, but things quickly turned sour when she discovered that he had been hiring sex workers and stealing money from her. When she found out, she wrote the email I detailed earlier in the episode with the subject line, "Fuck you." Defence Hoffman, however, accused investigators of rushing to judgment by arresting Brooks. He stated, "There had to be immediate satisfaction to the press and to the publicity. Their argument would be that Sylvie somehow caused her own death." He said that Sylvie took prescription medication to treat migraines and fibromyalgia, which causes widespread pain in the body. It was their theory that she had overdosed on her medication and then drowned in the bathtub. For the jury to believe that, they would need to believe that she somehow fell accidentally and half-dressed into an overflowing bathtub and then fell unconscious after overdosing on pain medication. It seemed highly unlikely. One of the first witnesses to testify was Detective Robert Mueller. He was one of the first officers at the crime scene. He told the jury, "She had on panties and she had on a sweater." Prosecutor Joel Seidemann asked, "Did it seem suspicious?" He replied, "Yes, absolutely. It seemed suspicious to me." Prosecutor Seidemann asked why, and Detective Mueller responded, "The fact that she was pulled out of the tub, and she had on panties, and she was wearing a sweater." Some of Sylvie's friends would take the jury through the mismatched and tumultuous relationship of Sylvie and Brooks. Sherry Fogelman, Sylvie's personal trainer, said that the last time she spoke to Sylvie, she told her that Brooks had shown her a website where he could order sex workers. She stated, she was disgusted. Another friend, Sharon Lombardo, revealed to the jury that Brooks would become so angry during arguments that he would erupt into death threats. She told the jury, "She told me that he would get so angry he would threaten to kill her. She complained about him always being at her house and never leaving. She complained about him getting stoned all the time. She complained about having to pay for everything. She complained about how angry he got when he was drinking." A friend who had seen Sylvie the day before she died testified that there were no injuries to her face or neck. When Sylvie was found dead, there was a red mark to her neck and a bite mark to her hand, but these weren't there the day beforehand. Then there was some testimony from Alyssa Milano, who said that she had begged for Sylvie to break off her relationship with Brooks and change the locks in her apartment. She stated, "She said she was only into him for the first month, and he was only providing companionship for her. She was concerned because he had the keys to her apartment, and we said, 'That's outrageous. We will pay for you to get your locks changed.'" The CCTV footage from inside the hotel would be entered as evidence. It showed Brooks making multiple trips from the hotel room after they checked in at 12:30 a.m. At 12:44 a.m, he leaves the hotel room barefoot, checks himself out in the hallway mirror, and then gets the elevator to the lobby, where he asks about room service. Over the course of the next hour, Brooks continually pops in and out of the hotel room. He appears frantic as he paces the hall, bites his nails, and repeatedly bashes the elevator button. At 1:47 a.m, he returns to the hotel room for one final time. He then leaves at 2:18 a.m, wearing a coat. He is captured, leaving the hotel. While it isn't known what time exactly Sylvie died at, it was around 2 a.m. that the first call came to the front desk, complaining about a leak coming from the ceiling. When Brooks did return to the hotel to find it swarmed with police and paramedics, he wasn't fazed at all, according to the officers. He never even asked what was going on, what happened to Sylvie, or where she was, nor did he ask to see her. He would be brought in for questioning, and photographs of his hands were taken. They showed some incriminating red marks across his knuckles, evidence of some kind of a fight. Dr. Barbara Sampson would take the jury through the autopsy of Sylvie. She showed a photograph of Sylvie's eye. Her eye and the inside of her eyelid showed burst blood vessels, which are characteristic of strangulation. She said to the jury, "It made me suspicious that we were dealing with a strangulation." She then showed the jury some points of bleeding and bruising inside Sylvie's mouth, which prosecutors said were caused by Brooks' hand, and then fingertip-sized bruises on her neck. She testified that forcible drowning and strangulation had been Sylvie's cause of death. This testimony would be challenged by testimony from Dr. Charles Welty, who had been hired by the defence. He said that none of the injuries pointed heavily enough in one direction to say what exactly happened to Sylvie. With the evidence all presented, closing arguments would be held. Defence Hoffman once again blamed Sylvie's death on herself. He said that she was under the influence of drugs, partially clothed, and not in a rational state. He even linked the possibility of Sylvie's death to some kind of rough sex, although the judge had not allowed testimony on this topic. Prosecutor Seidemann countered this, telling the courtroom that there had been a tenderness between Sylvie and Brooks, but the relationship had been made up of extreme highs and extreme lows. He said that during one of these extreme lows, Brooks grabbed Sylvie by the neck and held her underwater. The jury would deliberate for 3 days. During deliberation, they requested access to some of the evidence that was presented. Nicholas Brooks was ultimately found guilty of the second-degree murder of Sylvie Cachay. As the verdict was read aloud, Sylvie's loved ones cheered, while Brooks's sister burst into tears and shook her head at the judge. Outside of court, Sylvie's mother Sylvia said, "Today, justice was done, but the pain is immense, and it will never go away. But she had a precious spirit that will always live on. She's with me always. She was with me in the courtroom, and she is with me now." She and her husband said that they hoped that the verdict would send a message to women across the world who are victims of abuse, that they can and should reach out for help. In September, the sentencing phase of the trial was held. Sylvie's family made victim impact statements. Her brother Patrick Orlando said that Brooks was a cowardly liar, a parasite to our society, an abuser of women, and a repulsive murderer. Her father Antonio described Brooks as an animal and a sewer rat, telling him, "I have sat on that bench for every hearing, and during the trial not once did you show any evidence of regret or remorse." Her mother Sylvia said that there were no words to describe the cruelty of what her daughter went through, and the selfishness of a man who had only thought of himself. Brooks was allowed to provide a statement. He referred to Sylvie's murder as the most devastating thing that had ever happened in his life. He said, "I think about her every day and it breaks my heart. I loved her very much, and not a moment goes by where I do not miss her." Supreme Court Justice Bonnie Whitner said to Brooks that he had squandered his education and privilege before sentencing him to 25 years to life in prison. It was the maximum sentence that could be handed down. With Brooks behind bars, he would be ordered to pay $12.5 million to her family for the wrongful death lawsuit. Following the death of her beloved poodle, Sylvie Cachay was distraught and vulnerable. It was during this tough time that Nicholas Brooks entered her life. It was a doomed relationship from the start. Two people from opposite worlds with opposite dreams and ambitions. Sylvie was ambitious and successful, while Brooks was an unemployed slacker. Cracks in the relationship began to emerge within the first few months, but the tragic relationship would culminate with Sylvie dead in a bathtub and Brooks behind bars for 25 to life. Well, besties, that is it for this episode of Morbidology. As always, thank you so much for listening. I'd like to say a big massive thank you to my amazing new Patreon supporters, Tony, Maddie, Rachel, Kristen, Tracy, Lisa and Peyton. I am genuinely, eternally grateful for all of your support. If you'd like to join me up on Patreon, the link is in the show notes. I send out a handwritten thank you card as well as some exclusive merch. I also do bonus episodes of Morbidology Plus that aren't on the regular podcast platforms. Ad-free and early release episodes and behind the scenes, which includes case files, bonus audio and videos. You can join on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And the support really goes such a long way. Remember to check us out at morbidology.com for more information about this episode and to read our true crime articles. And please stay tuned to the end of this episode to hear a promo for the brand new true crime podcast, Crime Viking. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and have an amazing week.
Gorthendag, and a hearty greeting. The Crime Viking here, with a quick plug for my new true crime pod, hitting the airwaves on the 1st of April, as I must be foolish to launch a podcast. Our first foray into the waters takes us to the land of Mercia, which is a posh way of saying Stoke-on-Trent, and the tragic murder of Samantha Eastwood, whose killer was likened by police to Ian Huntley. We then send our spears to investigate a despicable crime in the ancient Forest of Dean, and a killer who will stop at nothing to avoid detection. I was inspired to drop the axe and pick up the mic after attending CrimeCon UK in 2021, where I met the award-winning Emily and her outstanding podcast, Morbidology. And you can join us both at CrimeCon 2022 on the 11th and 12th of June in London. Tickets still available. I'm on Instagram and Twitter as @CrimeViking. I'm also still taking case recommendations, so it's your chance to steer a course and pledge yourself for a life of adventure. Once again, @CrimeViking on social media. Come, join the Oath Sworn.